Vietnam War, lasting from 1955 to 1975, was one of the most significant conflicts of the 20th century. It saw the United States deeply involved in a prolonged and costly effort to stop the spread of communism in Southeast Asia, a region deemed critical during the Cold War era. Khe Sanh, a remote outpost near the Laos border and the Ho Chi Minh Trail, became strategically crucial for both sides. The U.S. built a base there to disrupt enemy supply lines and to establish a stronghold in the region. By 1967, it had become a major Marine base under the command of General William Westmoreland, who saw its potential. He believed that holding Khe Sanh could draw the enemy into a decisive battle, potentially turning the tide of the war. The base was well defended with artillery and airstrips, manned by thousands of Marines, making it a formidable fortress. However, its isolation and the surrounding dense jungle made it vulnerable to enemy attacks, posing significant challenges for the U.S. forces stationed there. In late 1967, the North Vietnamese Army, NVA, began surrounding Khe Sanh. On January 21, 1968, the siege began with a massive artillery bombardment. The Marines faced intense fire and ground attacks from the NVA's superior numbers. Despite being outnumbered, the Marines were determined to hold their ground. The siege coincided with the Tet Offensive, stretching American forces thin. The Marines at Khe Sanh faced isolation, constant attack, and dwindling supplies. Despite overwhelming odds, the Marines at Khe Sanh held on. They relied heavily on artillery and air support, calling in airstrikes on enemy positions. B-52 bombers pounded the jungle, and American air power played a crucial role. The Marines endured constant shelling, ground attacks, and scarce supplies. Their determination was bolstered by their belief in their mission to stop communism and fight for their country and each other. Operation Pegasus was launched on April 1, 1968, to relieve the Marines at Khe Sanh. This operation was a critical maneuver in the Vietnam War, aimed at breaking the siege that had trapped the Marines for months. The mission was not just about rescuing the besieged forces, but also about demonstrating the strength and resolve of the U.S. military. Thousands of U.S. troops, including the 1st Cavalry Division and the 101st Airborne Division, faced fierce resistance from the NVA. The North Vietnamese Army was well prepared and determined to hold their ground, making every inch of the advance a grueling battle. The U.S. forces had to employ both air and ground strategies to push through the enemy lines. The terrain was mountainous and covered in dense jungle, making the advance difficult. The soldiers had to navigate through thick foliage and steep inclines, which slowed their progress and made them vulnerable to ambushes. The harsh environment tested their endurance and resolve. After weeks of intense fighting, the relief force reached Khe Sanh on April 8, 1968. The arrival of the relief force was a turning point in the battle, bringing much-needed supplies and reinforcements to the beleaguered Marines. Their perseverance and bravery were instrumental in breaking the siege. The siege was broken, and the Marines were overjoyed after 77 days of continuous combat. Their relief was palpable as they celebrated their hard-fought victory. The end of the siege marked a significant achievement in the Vietnam War. The relief of Khe Sanh was a major victory and morale boost for the U.S. military. It showcased the effectiveness of coordinated military efforts and boosted the confidence of the troops. This victory was a testament to the resilience and determination of the U.S. forces in the face of adversity. The Battle of Khe Sanh was one of the longest and bloodiest battles of the Vietnam War. It lasted for 77 days, from January 21st to April 8, 1968, and involved intense fighting between the U.S. Marines and the North Vietnamese Army. It was a tactical victory for the U.S., but its strategic significance is debated. The U.S. forces managed to hold their ground and inflict heavy casualties on the enemy, but the cost was high. Some historians argue it was a diversion for the Tet Offensive. a larger and more coordinated series of attacks by the North Vietnamese that took place during the same period, while others see it as a major defeat due to high casualties and negative impact on public opinion. The images of wounded soldiers and the high death toll fueled anti-war sentiment back home in the United States. Regardless, the battle remains a pivotal moment, highlighting the human cost of conflict and the importance of leadership, courage, and sacrifice. The aftermath of the battle left a lasting impression on both the soldiers who fought and the civilians who watched from afar. The Marines who fought at Khe Sanh are heroes, deserving to be remembered for their service and sacrifice. Their bravery and resilience in the face of overwhelming odds continue to inspire future generations of soldiers and civilians alike.